All right, we're live, and I'll be damned. We got a game tomorrow. How about that? It is the Locker Room, #1 source for Texans digital content. We are counting down the days till Judgment Day. The Texans will decide what 53 men make the roster. A lot of these guys will still hang around. It's a lot different than not too long ago when there were only about a handful of guys that made the roster and the practice squads were smaller, but now the practice squads are huge. So a lot of these guys who get cut will still hang around, and we'll get the answer to that question in 4 days. We'll react to it live on SNL, and we'll get to see a game tomorrow. Really not a ton to watch for in this game, and I think the 53 is – there's not really too many tough decisions when it comes to the 53. It's not as tough as it once was. Now, you do have a lot of depth, and you're probably not putting as many good guys on the 53, but there's going to be a lot of guys hanging around, and there's not really like any intense position battles. There's some back end position battles, but I think even like if, like, let's say Juice Scruggs make it, they could easily find somebody on the waiver wire to replace Juice Scruggs. So even these guys on the back end of the 53 aren't necessarily safe. So we'll watch the game tomorrow. We'll react to it. We'll react to the 53, but I don't think there are too many tough decisions. And furthermore, they would never admit this, but I think they've already decided on the 53-man roster. I think we already know, or they already know who's gonna be on the 53-man roster. I don't know that there's too many guys that are going to play their way onto that tomorrow. There might be some guys that can play their way onto the practice squad, but as far as playing their way onto the 53-man roster, don't really see that being much of a thing. And I think they have a pretty good idea of it at this point. On the super chat, HDAV. You ain't never hate. Swarm. Hola, mi amigo. Out there in Austin. It is Friday, TGIF, and there's college football on tomorrow too, while the Texans are playing. So life is good. Life is great. And it's going to be an excellent weekend, one of many to come. So we'll see what happens with that. Don't anticipate any starters playing. I think they're going to be on the sidelines. I think they've already gotten their work in the joint practice, so we won't necessarily see that. One of the biggest stories of this year and one of the biggest stories of the offseason was the firing of Bobby Slowick and bringing in Nick Caley, the old system with the new system. And a lot of times you automatically assume, well, this is new, so it's going to work, and this is going to be better than it was last year when CJ Stroud started out on fire, one of the best rookie seasons in NFL history, and then it kind of fell off, and Bobby Slowick failed to adjust. When I was in West Virginia, I saw that Steven Ruiz was there. And I think he's one of the really good writers when it comes to nerdy football stuff that we appreciate in this community. And I was interested to see what exactly he was going to write and what it was going to be like, because he's one of those guys that is an analyst for The Ringer. The Ringer is known for just really good statistics, really good information, really good long-form writing. Which is kind of a lost art. Now, the thing about it is, a lot of times when you cover a team 365 days a year, when someone writes something, most of it you know. And I think that was the case in a large chunk of what Ruiz said. But I did notice that he got to talk to CJ a little bit. And he got to talk to Dalton Schultz. He talked to Gerard Johnson. And he also talked to Nick Caley. So he got some pretty exclusive stuff. And I wanted to see what he put together. And I went through it, and I have the link in the description. I went through it and just kind of wanted to puff on some of the nugs from the story. And just see what he had to say and what maybe we can take away from it. And a lot of it is stuff that we've been talking about for a while. But the basis of it was CJ Stroud's going to have more control this year. They trust CJ Stroud's football IQ. He's obsessed with football. And Bobby Slowick's offense, which we'll go through in a second, had some negatives. It also had some positives. There's also some interesting facts in here, which the Ringer always does a really good job with, and Ruiz especially does a good job with. And they also had like some cool breakdowns of the difference between a Bobby Slowick offense and the offense they're running now. Now, they do acknowledge, and I thought this was good, that, this offense is most of the examples that you get of this offense, the one that the Texans are running right now, are the greatest quarterback of all time, maybe the best athlete of all time in Tom Brady, which they acknowledge. But there were some good takeaways from it, and I'm just going to go through that here with you and look at some of the stuff he said. And he started with an interesting stat. The yards per drop back for CJ Stroud and the EPA per drop back in 2023 versus 2024. And it actually went from 3rd to 29th, which is actually kind of incredible and actually kind of fascinating. Now, I will say, while it's easy to blame Bobby, and we don't mind kicking Bobby in the junk a little bit.
Damn it, Bobby.
I do think there's other variables here, and he kind of touches on this, but the wide receiver position was completely depleted midway through the season, and you were without Nico Collins for a month plus. So there's obviously variables to all these stats, but going from 3rd to 29th is pretty eye-opening, to say the least. He then had the stats in his column, and again, I've linked it in the description, that no passer faced more unblocked pressure, 79, according to Pro Football Focus. So 79 times CJ Stroud was pressured where the offensive lineman didn't even really get a hand on the guy that was running at him. So that's the most unblocked pressures, 79, according to Pro Football Focus. CJ also finished 2nd in the NFL in dropbacks on 3rd and 10 plus. That's per True Media and per the Ruiz article. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because those are just a couple of stats that he threw out there to kind of put in perspective how bad it was for CJ Stroud yesterday, our last season. But this is where these are some quotes through the story that I thought really did a good job of showing substance and then kind of covering all ground on the substance. I really love stories like this. And when I see guys out there like the Breers or the Ruizes, I'm like, okay, I want to see what this national guy thinks and the information that he gathers. And I'm basically trimming the fat for you, because we know what everyone has said at every press conference. And we know that CJ is going to have new control. People like the national audience might not know that. So this was good information for them. But this was what Ruiz said, and I thought this was an interesting way of setting it up. He says, typically when a young quarterback struggles through a tough season, the solution isn't to put even more on his plate, but that's exactly what the Texans are doing in 2025. Now, the question is that a good thing? It can be, but it might not be. Is more control for CJ Stroud a good thing? It can be, but it's not just 100% a given, but this is the direction in which they're going. And I think there's good descriptions as to why this may be a good thing the more you read. He also talked to Dalton Schultz, and this is what Dalton Schultz had to say about this when it comes to CJ Stroud and having more control. He said this. And this is the perfect way to put it from Dalton Schultz. When he speaks to the media, he's solid. But he says, quote, "I don't want to say it lights a fire under quarterbacks, but it's like, hey, you better be on your shit." So in other words, you're getting all this control, you better be on your bleep. You have to be focused 24/7. It's not get the play, run the play like in the Shanahan offense. And speaking of the Shanahan offense, this is where the data this is the data that I found fascinating, and this is why Ruiz is someone that I think you read. So the Shanahan offense, we always hear about how great the Shanahan offense is, and it is. It's good, it's proven, it's great, but there is a flaw And it's not just a Texans flaw. It's not just a Bobby Slowick flaw, but it's one of the flaws of the Shanahan offense that has been kind of a recent trend in the NFL. And Ruiz explains it, and he starts off with this. Shanahan offense certainly has its flaws, which defenses were able to expose in 2024. The pass protection system is probably the most glaring weakness. And he brings that with stats. And these are fascinating stats when it comes to the Shanahan offense. The 49ers, we talked about CJ Stroud and the most unblocked pressures. The 49ers finished second with the second most. The Saints, who had former Shanahan assistant Clint Kubiak as their OC, finished fourth, and Mike McDaniel finished outside the top 10. So two guys that coached with Kyle Shanahan, and Kyle Shanahan himself were 3 out of the 4 teams in the top 4 of unblocked pressures, and they all ran the same system. That's kind of fascinating. That's beyond fascinating, and it's different situations. So 3 out of the 4 had the most unblocked pressures, which is fascinating. Now, this is where Ruiz kind of reels it in, and he says there are pros and cons to every scheme, and how an offense should operate depends on what quarterbacks can handle. This is a fact. And Dalton Schultz puts this in perspective. He says some guys just play faster the other way, so I think it would be unfair to say the system handicaps a quarterback more than another. It's kind of dependent. So there are variables on it. And it goes back to the question, is it a good thing? That's to be determined. We haven't seen it. There's 3 factors that I want to get into that might make you thirsty. Might make some of you thirsty, might make some of you gag. We'll get into that in a second. There's 3 factors that are going to come into play when it comes to this new scheme and CJ Stroud running it. But a couple more takeaways from the story. And this is where you kind of reel in that maybe it's not just the system, because this is some more stuff here when it comes to the offensive line. Even when the Texans had enough blockers, this is from Ruiz in the Athletic again, even when they had enough blockers to pick up the pass rush, it didn't always happen. They were bad when blocking against defensive line stunts. In fact, Stroud was sacked a league-leading 20 times. So we talk about the stunts and how confused the offensive line gets. CJ Stroud had a league-leading 20 times. So that's not the scheme. That's the personnel and maybe the coaching. So that's where Cole Popovich comes into play and what exactly he can do. I recommend reading this story. A lot of it you probably, if you follow this channel or SNL, we've already discussed. But I thought those were some pretty alarming numbers. 3 out of 4 of the most pressures with unblocked defenders from the Shanahan system, which is pretty crazy. And there's film breakdowns of the pros and the cons, and there's specific examples from the Texans. But that's actually really, really crazy, and it's a really, really good article. So you should definitely check that out. Strong recommendation from that. There are going to be 3 factors, though, and we'll hear from CJ Stroud off the practice field after the joint practice against the Lions. But there are 3 factors, and some people like this beer, some people don't. There's 3 factors that are going to decide if this new system and this increased control for CJ Stroud is a good thing. Because I think it's interesting that there's kind of been like a 100% assumption that, well, CJ's getting more control. That's a good thing. It can be, because you're able to point, you're able to shift protection, you're able to check to runs, and you don't just have to run the play and be dependent on to find a receiver quickly, like in the Shanahan scheme. But what if CJ doesn't recognize? What if it doesn't work out for him? What if he's checking out of the wrong play? That's the other thing that we got to see. And the factors are a beer that some people like. I'm not a big fan of this beer, but PBR. The 3 factors for CJ Stroud and whether this is going to be a good thing or a bad thing. It's PBR. play calling, blocking, and recognition. The play calling, we don't know what Nick Caley is going to be like as a play caller. We don't know how he's going to adjust. We don't know how he's going to handle it when there's the early script. We don't know how he's going to handle the halftime adjustments, which Bobby Slowick tried to say didn't exist, which I thought was ridiculous. And then he's going to have to recognize at the line of scrimmage. And Nick Caley's going to have to recognize what's going on. So those are the three factors. The blocking, we don't know. I said this earlier today on SNL. It feels like there's like some sort of weird belief that Titus Howard is suddenly like a really good right tackle. We've watched Titus Howard for a few years. And most people, including me, were ready for Titus Howard to get the hell off the right side of the offensive line. Now, he looks like he's in better shape. He sounds like he's a little bit more committed and has a little bit closer to the mindset of what a good offensive lineman has to have, but he's back on the right side for now. We don't know what the official offensive line is going to be, but it seems like there's clues that he's going to be back at right tackle, which could have as much to do with Blake Fisher as anything. So we could be in for a rude awakening when it comes to how this offensive line is going to handle stunts, how they're going to block guys. They really haven't, we talk about the difference between practice and games, that they really haven't had just a defensive coordinator throw the kitchen sink at them. Now they do face one of the best defenses in the league on a daily basis when they're practicing. And that's another thing that Dalton Schultz brought up is the Texans defense can whoop their ass, and it's kind of a good way to prepare for whatever the Rams or whoever's going to throw at them. But we don't know how they're going to handle these things. Cole Popovich has never been a head NFL offensive line coach, or he's never coached this squad. Well, Nick Caley's never had to adjust. He's never had to handle this. We've seen Titus Howard in the way that stunts have been handled by him. It wasn't great. And that was he was a big part of those numbers that we threw out earlier. So I think there's reason for optimism that perhaps they'll be coached better. But I do think it's kind of a dangerous territory where now suddenly we're saying, okay, Titus Howard is going to hold it down on the right side and all is right. And oh, by the way, Ingram comes from Minnesota. He's the Minnesota Kenyon Green, and he's going to handle stunts just fine as well. And you also have a left tackle in Ariante Ursary, who is a rookie. So there seems to be like a honeymoon phase with the offensive line right now, and it's going to be a lot different than what they're used to. I like what Cole Popovich has. I think based on what we've been able to judge, the offensive line looks okay, but it's going to change a hell of a lot. And it's going to be about the play calling, the blocking, and the recognition when it comes to CJ Stroud. Strong recommendation, though, for that article by Ruiz, if you want to check that out. Let's peep what CJ Stroud had to say after the joint practice. Starting out, his first answer is about how he thought they looked. Here's what CJ had to say.
I like that we were competitive, man. It's not always going to be perfect, especially going against a new scheme. I thought it was, back and forth. They did good. We did good. I think we made a lot of plays, a lot of explosives. We finished better than we started, which was nice. So, yeah, man, it's been great, having these joint practices. I thought today went really well. Yeah, we've been, we came in together, did rookie mini camp, did all the rookie meetings, everything. So, it's a brother of mine. I'm super proud of him. He's playing with the most confidence that I've seen him, and he's balling, man. He's doing really well.
It looked like things really started to go when you started to connect with Nico. No surprise there, man. Just the role that he plays.
Shut up, fatty. It's my college teammate, Tyleek. Dirty Bubble, a.k.a.
Some of y'all were trying to say that was about Stutes. That was mean of y'all.
Just the role that he plays for this offense, obviously new offense. I know that it doesn't change when you look to him, when you meet him, how vital that
Yeah, I mean, he's always, on the priority of getting the ball in his hands. He's special with it, but, it's good to try to get it to other guys. And I thought he did a good job today, just like everybody else. But, yeah, it's always a focus, but they always try to take him away usually, so got to just find ways to be good in other ways.
You started to see things click a little bit more for Jalen Noel as training camp has ticked on.
This dude's asking about Jalen Noel. The Noel thing is interesting. I would still bet on Christian Kirk being the number 2. I think that's a safe bet, but I'm not sleeping on Noel. I could see Noel once the season begins being a big factor. I also think that Higgins is going to be a factor in the red zone. I think they're going to line up just based on watching. They're going to line up Higgins, I think, on the right, Nico on the left. And I think that's where we really see like the basketball player background from Higgins. I don't expect Higgins to light up the stat sheet this year, but I do anticipate him being a pretty big factor in the red zone. And it looks like the right side is going to be where they line him up.
Yeah, he looks great, man. He's done really good or just running clean routes, using his quickness, using his speed to his advantage. Starting to learn how to run NFL routes, which I think has been great. But, yeah, he's making plays out here every day, and I'm really happy for him. I would say really he's really polished in a lot of areas. He came in polished and naturally, like, got a good ability to pass protect. I think in the run game, he's got his feet under him, using his power to his advantage, his strength. So you see him moving guys back. You see him, using double teams to his advantage, using his leverage. So I think he's done great in pass protection, but he's taken a step in the run game.
D'Amico mentioned it a few times. I know the offensive line mentioned it. Do you feel how physical this group is and how much pride they take in?
Physicality of the O-line. Cody Stutes going in the trunk.
Yeah, definitely, man. It's a pop every time, the ball snap. I thought, it starts with Jake. Jake has done a good job IDing things. And him and Lakin are like the first ones to kick it off. Ed's right there. Titus is right there. Taylor, it's a group that's a lot of dogs, man. So I'm really happy that, that we're able to run the ball like we have, because that opens up everything else. I mean, I don't know. Like we have a really good relationship. He's very to himself, very quiet, but he talks to me about a lot. I talk to him about a lot. Yeah, I think we're really like on the same page all the time. There's only a couple times throughout the day where like we probably don't be on the same page, and those are just because we haven't run those plays before. But usually the stuff that we do, we're always on the same page.
I know you're busy out there. You have to feel for the job that Titus was doing against Aiden Hutchinson. I mean, obviously, one of the elites. And it looked like Titus really got after that matchup.
Yeah, I think Titus is, his presence felt at tackle. He's doing a really good job being firm in protection, using his hands, using his length. I think he's done a great job, and he also gonna let you know about it too, which I think is cool. He's a dog, man, so I'm really happy for that guy. Really proud of him, and he wants to have a great year. He told me, he wants to be a Pro Bowler this year. He has a lot of expectations for himself, and he's answering that right. When we practice against guys like him and Danielle and Will every day, I think he's done a good job. All right, Josh. Okay.
All right, there you go. It's quick, short and sweet. Someone's asking about CJ Stroud, the beanie. He wears the beanie in the heat. Is it chilly in Detroit? I think it's a little bit colder, but he wears the beanie in the 100 degrees. That's CJ's thing. He's always rocking the beanie. I don't know. Kind of like a old school Enrique Iglesias type of thing. I think he used to make that cool back in the millennial days, but he does do that. I don't know. Says I think Kirk is going to be a great fantasy pick. When are you taking him? You got to take him late. If you take him too early, that's a little bit of a waste. But I would. I took him second to last round, which I think is worth a tire kick. That might be your first guy you drop, or kind of a steal. Kane San Miguel says it's not just the players being coached better; it's Nick and Cole being on the same page and developing the scheme together. I don't know. Like I don't know if that's important or not. Like I guess, but there can be difference of ideas and you can gel together. I don't know that they got to be on the on the same page. Obviously, they can't be doing completely different things, but if the scheme sucks, they can be on the same page. Like, you can be aligned and it still kind of suck. Do I think Titus Howard took on a leadership role? A little bit. Like the Titus Howard thing is just something I would just be careful with. I like the way that he sounds. I like the way that he looks. But am I just supposed to forget what we saw the last 3 years? Like, it wasn't all scheme. I mean, there were times where he was just getting beat. Being in shape will help. Being coached better will help. But it's wild that now we're in a situation where it's like, oh, Titus Howard's holding it down at right tackle. Okay. I mean, crazier things have happened than him bouncing back, especially given the fact that he's controlling what he can control. But that just kind of feels a little bit like a danger zone. A little bit like a danger zone when it comes to Titus Howard and the offensive line. But I strongly recommend the Ruiz article. I think it's very good. Clutch 421 says Landry's been hurt too many times. No, I haven't been. I mean, I think that's one of the identities of the Houston Texans organization is offensive line, suspect offensive line play. I've just watched Titus Howard play the last few years. I mean, there's a reason that they were moving him back to guard. And I think we got to look at the entire situation and truly answer why Titus Howard is back at right tackle. Maybe it's because he looks better there, but it also has as much to do with what Blake Fisher is. It also has as much to do with that. It also has to do with the fact that Cam Robinson got hurt, and they got to look at him. Now, he took advantage of it, and he has looked pretty good in practice, but Titus Howard being back at right tackle has as much to do with what Blake Fisher is as it does that Titus Howard has just surprised them with the way he's been a right tackle. He was a guard. It has as much to do with him not wanting to put Blake Fisher out there. So that's just something we don't be shocked if there's a lot of struggles on the offensive line. New is not always way better. We don't know what Nick Caley is going to be. There's a lot of questions. But yeah, there's a lot of, I don't want to say anxiety. The word is being thrown anxiety in the chat. The Titus Howard thing's just kind of a little bit crazy. It is a locker room. Got a game tomorrow, 13 hours away. Really not a lot to expect. I don't think we're going to see too many starters. I don't think there's too many guys that are going to play their way onto the roster. I always think that the best way to measure things is if a guy's out there playing late into the fourth quarter, more times than not, that means he's probably not going to be on the team. The guys to watch, I don't know if they're going to test Jakob Johnson or not. It seems like they've been testing him a lot in practice. Maybe we get to see Jakob Johnson. Maybe they decide to run fullback heavy. Maybe they give him more looks at tight end and figure that out. I think Luke Lachey is a guy who's not going to make the team. They're going to hope he's be on the practice squad, but he could probably afford a nice showing as well. Just shows some sort of a pulse. I don't know if they're going to play Irv Smith or not. I don't know what they think of Irv Smith. And then Harrison Bryant, I'm sure we see him because we haven't seen much. He's got to show that he can be playable. I could see Harrison Bryant being a relatively big part of tomorrow. And then like the DBs that we're talking about, like I don't know that Yeast is going to play his way onto the squad. I could see Yeast hanging around, but I don't know that Yeast is just going to play his way onto this squad. They seem to, for some reason, D'Angelo Ross seems to have gotten some momentum lately. I don't know what happened there. Maybe they're just using Tremont Smith more on special teams, but they can't quit D'Angelo Ross. It doesn't matter how he performs. It seems like the reps go up. Little Jesus says, is Blake Fisher the new Kenyon Green? I would say no, because they at least gave Kenyon Green 3 years to develop. Now, I don't know if this means that Blake Fisher is any worse than Kenyon Green, but they're not dragging their feet on this. So he might just be way worse to the point where they don't want to play him, or maybe the new regime just isn't going to waste much time and put guys out there based on their draft stock. I think they've probably performed at the same level. I mean, hell, Kenyon Green last year was getting his ass whooped, and D'Amico Ryans was going up there and saying that he was playing well. We all knew he wasn't. And then he kind of went down with the hurt shoulder, and we didn't see him again until late in the season. But I don't know if Blake Fisher right now, he might be worse than Kenyon Green. But unlike Kenyon Green, they're not going to throw him out there in front of their franchise quarterback and try to figure stuff out. So we'll see what happens with that. Really not a lot to watch for tomorrow. We'll react to the game on Sunday. Post-game show, per the usual, is going to be in regular season right after. So we got that popping. We got a lot of stuff popping with SNL as well. A lot of behind-the-scenes stuff. It's going to be a really fun thing to get going. When do we start talking Super Bowl on the Texans? Is it too early? I would say probably so. But I mean, that's obviously their goal. I mean, if this offense works, then they're going to be a contender. If this offense is a top 14 offense, they're going to be a contender. And this goes back to the 2/3 theory that we discussed 3 days ago, where your defense is going to be really, really, really good, perhaps elite, and your special teams, there's reason to believe that they're going to be really, really good. So you always talk about the complementary football. That's a large chunk of the complement. What does the offense look like? It's something to keep an eye on. But the 53, once they put it out there, they're going to be active on the waiver wire. I could see them bringing in offensive lineman, tight end. Those are the areas to look at. Game tomorrow at noon. Appreciate y'all for rolling through. Appreciate everyone for rolling with SNL. Be sure to subscribe to that channel. Subscribe to this one. This is a short one. CJ Stroud is more control a good thing. Check out that Ruiz article. Strong recommendation there. You know a lot of this stuff, but when you trim the fat and look at some of the numbers, it's really, really good. Plus, much appreciation for long form these days. It's kind of a lost art, like many things in media. Appreciate y'all for rolling through. Always remember, when it comes to this Texan stuff, we're all in it together. Happy game day tomorrow. Happy football season is back. Countdown to Judgment Day. Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the Locker Room on YouTube. You know what it is. Let's get it. Ayy. Locker Room. Yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk. Yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize. Every angle's what we really do. We the source. We the pulse of the city too. Landlocked. Got the game in the headlock. Localize every time. Can't stop, won't stop. Yeah.